Welcome, everybody, to this week's Manitoba Stronger Together Zoom call meeting. I appreciate that everyone's taken the time to join us tonight. We've got a couple of guests with us tonight with one topic that we're going to talk about. And I wanted to go back and talk a little bit about what happened in 2022 in Ottawa, because I think, like everything, the media, the mainstream media has been dripping on that for 4 years now, and people are starting to forget what happened. And I was talking to one of our guests the other day, and he showed me a picture of something, which I don't know if he wants to talk about that or not, but it just reminded me of this. And I thought it would be a really good thing for us to talk about this for a whole bunch of reasons. First, lest we forget, which is what they used to say when I was a kid, and they've all forgotten, by the way. But lest we forget what happened. And there is an election coming up. And I know folks will say, well, this is a municipal election. What's that got to do with it? And as you know, what we've been doing here at Manitoba Stronger Together this year is we've been focusing our efforts on getting people involved in the election, taking control, governing yourself. People are always complaining about governance, and so why don't you start to govern? And I think this is what they're going to talk about tonight will remind you how far off the rails we've gotten. And I don't really blame, I mean I do, but I blame the Canadian people as much as I do those fools in Ottawa, because we put them there. And we think it's our God-given right to go to a restaurant at night or a football game, and if they give that to us, we'll be happy. And no. And so that's what the intent is with what they're going to talk about tonight. So we have Elmer Penner and Scott Hockaday here, and they were at Ottawa, and they also paid a high price, I would say, when they got through there, and then we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But I want to play this little video that we put together. Okay, so with that, welcome everybody to this week's Manitoba Stronger Together meeting. Thank you for taking the time to join us. These gatherings are about more than just sharing information. They're also about creating connection and recreating the communities that we used to have before they were torn apart in the last 5 or 6 years. So we're glad you're here. Quick note about our format for those of you who might be here for the first time. Our meetings run about 60 minutes. And everybody's welcome to participate in the discussion, but please note that only the featured guest presentations are actually video recorded. That's not quite true. We're recording now because I'll forget at the appropriate time. So we're recording this, but when we publish the recording, I edit all of this out. And so we just see the share screens. We don't see all of the letterbox pictures of you all folks there, because some people don't want to be recorded, and I understand that. Respectful atmosphere. Manitoba Stronger Together is committed to maintaining a respectful and thoughtful environment for discussion. Our guest speakers may express viewpoints that are their own and not necessarily those of MST, and that's perfectly fine. We value a diversity of perspectives, and we believe that open civil dialogue is essential to the healthy, informed community. Let's listen generously, ask questions thoughtfully, and engage constructively. We don't censor here. It's not like the CBC. You come up with something, an idea or a thought, and if it doesn't correspond to what the CBC wants, they take it out. Same as Facebook are still heavily editing and censoring things in Canada. So we don't get into that. And I have to say, we've had some pretty controversial speakers on here, and only once did we have some fool come on and try to make us a problem, and we kicked them out permanently. They did point out to us a flaw in our system, which we weren't aware of, and so we fixed that since then. What you're looking at on the screen right now is our social media. We have them all, but frankly, Facebook and Twitter and Rumble are probably the most active, and YouTube. We did start YouTube again. They kicked us off once a couple of years ago, and I said to hell with them, but folks didn't seem to want to come over to Rumble, so we're back on YouTube. WMR Epic, Anthony, you want to talk? You had some exciting news about WMR this week.
Yeah, it's been a good week. We had two more municipalities opt out, East St. Paul and your area, St. Clements. So we're up to 10 municipalities now that have opted out.
10 of
And
18.
Sorry?
10 of a total of 18 are out.
Well, 17 because I don't include Winnipeg.
Okay.
Because Winnipeg has veto power. They're not opting out.
True. You got me there.
10 out of 17 municipalities. And there is talk that a couple of more are in talks about opting out as well. Just waiting to hear back if there's any substance to it.
Yeah, I got an email from one of our members out in, I'll get it wrong. I think it was McDonald. McDonald's still in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's out, withdrawn. Then who must have been re-show. But anyway, one of the members have got a hold of me, or no, it was Cartier. One of the members got a hold of me today and was talking about what's going on in the background. The council doesn't seem to want to move out, but the people are starting to apply pressure to them. So
Yeah, and I think that's what it's going to take is we need to start sending emails to the rest of these mayors and reeves and councilors and let them know, like, there's 10 already out. There's no point.
Put your hand up.
yeah,
Do what the people want and opt out.
sorry, Peter, you put up your hand and I muted you. I apologize. Go ahead. Unmute yourself. It's a little microphone there.
There, sorry. Finally got it. So I would think, Ken, tell me what you think, that if 10 out of 17 pull out, it's rather pointless that the WMR continues. Would you not think?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But there's a lot of politics going on here. Remember, did you read that blog I wrote on the politics involved with this?
No.
It was, you know what, let me I can bring that up and show you guys. Let's see. Yeah, I wrote a blog post on that, which I thought was interesting because the NDP have pulled off a real, here it is. So this blog post was from January 27th. And what it is we go through why the NDP did what they did. If you remember, they said they were going to have this freedom bill, and they brought it in originally in October of 2024, and then the legislative session ended, and then they had to. So that means it was all bills before the government, when the session ends, are gone. They have to reinstate them. So when the government legislature came back into session in 2025, they reintroduced the freedom bill, and it was passed into law. I think it was June 3rd or 4th of 2024. But it didn't just say you could opt out. It had a whole bunch of really cool rules, and it had something in it called the transition period. So the reason the NDP did this, and it's all explained in this blog post from January 27th. The reason the NDP did that is because they were going to make this thing into an election issue. And initially, I was thinking they were making it into a municipal election issue, but the word on the street right now is that Mr. Canoe may very well be calling a snap election provincially, like for the legislature in the next couple of weeks. And there's a whole bunch of reasons for that. But what this thing does is the Freedom Bill essentially says, listen, if you want to get out, a municipality has to hold a public meeting. They have to give, I don't know, 3 months or whatever it is, notice to the public of that. Then they have to have this discussion and debate. Then they can write a motion to the minister, and then the minister will consider letting them out, or may let them out, is what it says. But it gives us a transition period. And what the transition period is, it says, if you decide you want to get out of the WMR before the municipal election, which is October 28th of this year, then all you have to do is write a letter to the minister that you want to get out. You don't have you dispense with a public meeting and everything. All you've got to do is write a letter to the minister, and the minister will make a regulation and let you out of the WMR. Now, in addition to that, remember, people were really mad about this WMR because they created this Plan 2050, which was nuts. And if you don't remember that, we have a whole thing on our website. If you go right here, if you see my mouse fiddling around on the WMR button, there was a lot the matter with it. And so they canceled the Plan 2050. And this is really interesting. The government said in the Freedom Bill that the WMR had to come up with a new Plan 2050, but they didn't have to come up with it until January 2027, after the transition period was over, which is triggered by the municipal election. So why would the NDP do that? This is why they want to do it. They're setting it up. They've set it up, that the municipalities have no idea what will be in the Plan 2050 before the election. Because remember, they don't have to submit the new plan until after the election. So who the hell is going to stay in it with not knowing what it is? And if after the election, you don't have to be able to be let out. So the NDP is forcing these people in the municipalities to get out. Now, if the NDP loses the election, then those rules come in where they don't have to let you out, and you have to have these public meetings and all this kind of stuff. So they'll be saddling the new government, if the PCs get in, they'll be saddling them with all of that baggage and stuff. And there's more to it than that, but you could read the blog post. So it's kind of brilliant what they did. It's evil, but in my opinion, but it's rather brilliant. So if you haven't read that blog post, it lays it all out in there, and it actually shows you the parts out of the red parts here that you're seeing.
A lot of stuff in there.
Mm-hmm.
Is the parts right out of the bill. So anyway, so you can look at that, and that's what's going on there. We don't normally take questions in the middle, but David, if it's really quick, because we're already getting behind. My big mouth has kept us a little longer. Go ahead, David.
Just 30 seconds. The coverage on CTV the other night was unusually detailed. And it also pointed out that I forget which RM it was, is now being run by Deepak Joshi, the same guy who is Winnipeg's CAO, which is interesting to transition from being the boss of Winnipeg to the boss of an RM.
That's St. Clements.
It did explain a lot of the details, and it even explained to the public that if they didn't vote for it now, it would be, in their words, 8 years before they could ever get out.
That's correct.
They pointed out a lot of the facts. They didn't point out how it would harm home building, but at least they pointed out that it was a deal that was uncertain until the end of the year.
Yep.
So a whole lot of the crookedness was waved around on CTV.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I guess they probably got out of my blog post, because I'll tell you, the CBC didn't know anything about it. I met with them, as you know, last week. All right. Also, we do have a little video from one of the. This is from this is little clip is from the WMR board meeting in. I just got to find my. I think it's I think it's in January. Even though this is, so I'm just going to play a little clip, so you guys can get a.
They're seeing that feedback.
I'll just give you a little intro here. So this is from the televised on YouTube. They used to televise the WMR building meetings live, but they were never recorded. So they would broadcast them live and then they would disappear. But one of our members started to record them. So I believe this is from the January Winnipeg Metropolitan Region board meeting. I think the lady speaking is the Reeve in one of the municipalities, and this is the Winnipeg Metropolitan Region board meeting. So it's interesting. Give a listen to what she says, and it'll give you some idea what's going on at those board meetings.
They're seeing that, feedback from the residents, want us to opt out, and we haven't been able to deliver the reasons why we should stay. And the conversation today is great. If we can get those answers from the minister next meeting and report back, I think that's fantastic. I do believe in a regional plan. But again, like we've all just said, if we have nothing to present, it's fluff, and fluff means nothing. Fluff doesn't help anybody. Doesn't help anybody in the region. So that's what needs to be taken back.
So I know that's just a short video, but I think you guys need to understand that they've been at this for 6 years, and the government, and of course they made that crazy plan 2050 that was kicked out in the fall of 2024. But then the government introduced the Freedom Bill in the fall of 2024, and yet they haven't come up with a scope of work in a year and a half, because this meeting was from January. In a year and a half, there's been no instruction to these people about what they should be doing. And yet they're still spending your money. So, I mean, it's incredible. General updates. We haven't set a new date for the Mateo Center event yet. Learning portal. I haven't got a feedback from anybody. That must mean I did one hell of a job. Thank you, Ken. The candidate training, we're starting tonight. We're going to have a fairly short one tonight. I want to go through with everybody where to find the regulations that have to do with when you can register to be a candidate and what you have to do, etc. And those are unique for every rural municipality. We'll get into that. We'll do a quick one tonight after this meeting. So the municipal guidelines have been released. This thing, I've just carried it along. This is the training portal. Upcoming Zoom calls next Tuesday, March 10th. We're going to have the people from Silicon on, and they're going to do a presentation about what the heck that's all about. And then the following week on March 17th, I have invited, there's a community group that's involved with opposing Silica, and I have reached out to them and asked them to come on, and they're not responding to me. I do have a pre-recorded event I was at where they presented, so I may consider putting that on the 17th. But since that's kind of the talk of the town right now, I thought that you guys would benefit from hearing both sides of that. And again, if the community group won't respond to me, I don't know why they wouldn't, but they haven't. I've been after them for 2 weeks now. I do have a recorded event that I was at in Oakbank, and I can show you that. Deb, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Ken. There was a few things happening in the world last week. Technology works. Lab-grown beef poses different allergy hazards than conventional beef. U.S. News/Child Health Defense, sweetened drinks linked to higher anxiety in teens. Winnipeg Free Press, Manitoba COVID response team member named Canada's Chief Public Health Officer. Rumble, Press for Truth, Stu Peters/Dan Dix talk about Soji and the culture of death. Springer Nature Link, acute effects of a chewable beetroot-based supplement on cognitive performance. Expose UK puberty blocker trial finally halted over significant safety concerns, and the CAS report. The CAS report is really interesting if you read it. Children's Health Defense, lawmakers launch bipartisan bill to block Trump's executive order on glyphosate. Epic Times, a UK-based infant formula sold by Costco is being recalled across the country due to the potential presence of a toxin that can cause nausea and vomiting in infants, Canada's food inspector says. YouTube, John Bolton/Matt Walsh talk about destruction of Canada and Canadians are ignorant of their fate. Focal Points, Nicholas Hauschert, declassified CIA documents reveal plans to control human behavior through chemicals covertly delivered via vaccinations. And last one, Justice Center for Freedom, Rumble 4-minute video. John Carpay talks about the repeal section of the BC Human Rights Code to restore freedom of expression. And just a heads up, I do believe that the lawsuit for Springfield and recording the municipal meetings comes up on April the 30th. So all of this combined, our win of the week, number one, was Technology Works. Lab-grown beef poses different allergy hazards than conventional beef. Number two, win of the week, Children's Health Defense. Lawmakers launch bipartisan bill to block Trump's executive order on glyphosate. Number 3, win of the week, UK puberty blocker trial finally halted over significant safety concerns and the Cass report. And all honorable mention was YouTube, John Bolton and Matt Walsh talking about the destruction of Canada and how Canadians are ignorant of their fate. And that kind of wraps it up until next week.
Okay, go ahead with your helpful hints. Maybe you can teach people how to grow beans out of your ears there like you've done.
Well, to be perfectly honest with you, I was needing a fix of green. It's that time of the year where I'm so sick of winter. I just need green, blue sky, and yellow sun. Anyway, this week, it's the final part of alcohol consumption and hangover remedies. And what I do talk about on this last leg is other risks from additives such as aspartame and Diet Pepsi. And some of the studies that have been done, the benefits of drinking carbonated water. And then I've stuck in a recipe that I have used for hangovers, plus being diabetic, I use this recipe quite often just for buildup of energy after exercising, like snowshoeing for a mile. And in my opinion, I rely heavily on this correction for hangover ingredients. It's coconut water and juice and a little bit of salt. And if you want, you can put some honey in it. And I swear by it, regardless if I have a hangover or if I'm just dealing with my sugar levels. And then there's another one that I included. It's a vitamin smoothie. So you can read it all at your own leisure. Thank you.
Wonderful. And now we're going to go on to our guest. Okay, we got everybody in the house now, do we? Well, welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for coming on. I think it's important for us in these kind of grassroots organizations to remind folks what in the hell happened and why it's important and what it did to the folks that tried to express their democratic rights. And so I don't generally go into a big introduction about the people here, but Elmer, could you tell us, I want to go to each one of you, and Elmer, could you tell us a little bit about who you are and then we'll get into how you what you did and how you got involved?
Okay, so a little introduction. I grew up in a small town north of Arborg, not even in town, out in the country. Grew up blue collar worker. Worked in the shop, and then eventually started my own trucking company. And that's kind of what I've been mainly focused on for the last many years. So the trucking company is probably the biggest reason why I got involved with what happened in 2022. Although I think I would have probably gotten involved anyways because I was so upset at everything being taken away from us. So I was thinking out today, what I might talk about, and I would consider myself either a builder or a creator. Protesting is definitely not something that comes easy to me. That's not my second nature. That's not something I like to do. But when they start taking life away from you to a point where you can't survive, all of a sudden you stand up and say enough is enough. So I hope is that about what you were looking for?
Yeah. I'm setting the stage, and so folks know a little bit who you are. When we see people on TV or in newspaper articles, you set a certain idea of what you think those people are like. And maybe you don't think they're like you, but when you find out and you get to know these folks, they're just like you. Scott, you want to continue with that? Tell us a little bit about you. You're muted, Scott.
He already told me he's not a technical guy, so I'm not either.
It should be on the lower. Oh, there you go. You got it. Vern, you might want to unmute yourself too before we get to you.
No, I'm lost. I'm lost. I've lost everything here. 1 second. I don't. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're coming in loud and clear.
We can hear you. We can see you.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't see anything. But I'm a lot like Elmer. I'm not in the. I don't protest very well. But I wasn't a trucker either. I was a carpenter. I've always been a carpenter, and the Elmer and all the truckers gave us hope, and I felt like I had to be there. I felt sorry for them on Wednesdays because I knew that, it wasn't the big show that it was over the weekends. And I thought it'd be nice if more boots on the ground would help them and give them a chance to rest. And so I went down and took a cargo trailer and a bunch of fuel and propane and food, and went down and found a spot on Nicholas Street. And I was with Elmer and Sheldon and Byrne, and it turned out there was an awesome group of people on that street, all family to me now. And it was just it was pretty surreal, the whole experience. And I once again, I was packed up when we had an appointment with Dr. Tam. I thought she was coming, and I was so happy I was gonna get to go home to my dogs and my farm, and I packed up and was ready to go until Trudeau called us traitors. And at that point I knew we were in it for the long run. So we all bit the bullet and took the beating.
Byrne, you want to add to that? Tell us a little bit about you and how you got involved. And
Well, yeah, I've been asked this question before. Hi to everybody. I'm from Fernbuchert, northern BC, northeastern British Columbia, which, yeah, it's a long way from Ottawa. And I found that out the hard way. I'd made the trip years ago as a young man, but then when we made the trip and I was planning, I think Google lied to me and said it was 3,200 kilometers. And when we made the trip, it was 4,200 kilometers. Got to the Manitoba Ontario border and it was still 2,000 kilometers. But it was a lot of like what Elmer was talking about. Like it had just gotten to a point where we were so tired. We were pretty untouched up where we were, honestly. Like I'm from a small town called Fort St. John, oil patch town, agriculture around here. Used to be logging. There's still some logging. Multi-industry town, pretty well-to-do place. Like there's lots of industry here. I was working in the oil patch at the time, and honestly, my job hadn't suffered at all. I guess by the luck of the draw, not really. I don't believe in that, but the customers that we worked for weren't keen on enforcing vaccine mandates, that kind of thing. They just kind of let us go. And in some cases, honestly, our jobs were more streamlined because now instead of wandering through a building signing permits, you walked up to a window and scribbled your signature on something and went to work and cut 10 minutes out of that job, right? And so in a lot of ways, we weren't really touched. My kids were blessed to be going to a private school that did their best to carry life on as normal. My wife teaches at this school as well. It's a place not tied to the Freedom Convoy, but called Freedom Thinkers, incidentally. But yet my youngest kid, my kids were getting kicked out of swimming pools, and you think about this time. I was just thinking about this the other day, and time passes and you forget how tough that was. You forget how crazy our world was, and my youngest at 10 years old was a pretty sensitive kid. And he, when he heard that I was thinking about going on this convoy, he's just like, yes, finally we're doing something, which was the feeling, right? Like we were starting to feel pretty helpless. How long is this going on? And so when a road trip across the country came up, I mean, that's my wheelhouse, right? I'm a truck driver. I can absolutely do that. And so it just gave you something to do. More in solidarity with truckers that actually were feeling the brunt of this, because I didn't cross the border. My job hadn't suffered, but you just wanted to feel a part of, just to be doing something constructive. But setting out super naively, no idea what this was going to be. None of us knew. And yeah, like Elmer touched into it. Like he said, he's a builder. Well, you guys are from Manitoba, most of you. You're familiar with, you're either Mennonite or you're familiar with Mennonites. So there's a few hurdles to cross to do something like this. Mennonites historically have segregated a little bit, never involved in politics, and usually will keep to themselves. And so that gives you an idea on how bad it was. When we got parked and situated on Nicholas Street and we jumped out of our trucks, 2/3 of the guys were Mennonite. And that amazes me to this day. Like, just the brothers I met, one of the guys right behind me had the same last name as I did and was from Manitoba and pronounced it the same way. I'm like, this is crazy. And like Scott said, like, we're brothers. Like, we had such a good time. Just, yeah, you'll find this out about me. I can go on and on. So anyway, just family man. Family was 110% behind me. I had a buddy who was going to come with me, and his wife just wasn't quite as keen as I was. I pulled his trailer all the way down there. He lent me his trailer. I had another brother back here who he and a few other coworkers would sign my name to some tickets to give me an income. The support level I received was like, I refer to myself as the best supported trucker in Ottawa. I don't know if that's true or not, but because I came from so far away, I do come from a town that there's so many trucks that run out of this town. So it surprises me that I was the only big truck that came from Fort St. John. I did have some friends, other truckers that came, but showed up in a pickup. Yeah, I had so much support, and it's transformational time in my life.
Mm-hmm. Elmer, Canadians only saw what was reported on the newscasts. I mean, I'm always amazed at how few people, we're in somewhat of a bubble. And I'm amazed at how many people outside of this bubble we seem to be in, this, whatever you want to call this, is a wake bubble. And there's so many Canadians that have no idea what happened or what it was like on the ground, just what they saw in the newscasts. From your perspective, what were the conditions like on the ground? Like, first, let's break this down a little bit. The conditions on the ground between the truckers. I mean, most of you didn't know each other, we're just from all over the country. So what was the feeling on the street when you were there?
So between us guys that were there, part of the, I hardly even want to call it a protest, but it was let's just stop this nonsense. Obviously a very tight camaraderie, a very tight understanding of what needed to be done, and it was totally unorganized. To call a certain person an organizer, I think is not even the right term, because we all just, I mean, somebody started it, obviously, right? But then when we got there, everybody just did their part. The thing about most of the people there is we were born on our, so to say, on our feet. We think as we do stuff. We need fuel. We figure out, how do we go get fuel? We need food. How do we get fuel? We had food brought in from Manitoba. We brought food to begin with. When I went, I knew we weren't going for 2 days, because I didn't honestly expect Trudeau to come out and say why he was doing what he was doing. And like we saw, he fled very fast. He didn't want to face truth. So it was a lot of actually small business owners, like or builder. Scott is a phenomenal builder. He's being very humble as to what he does as far as a construction guy goes. He builds mansions, multi-million-dollar buildings. Amazing guy. But anyways, that's the kind of people that were there. People that had a head on their shoulders. I met one reporter. He was from Bridge City News, and he's a immigrant from, I'm not sure how long ago, but anyways, he's been in Canada for quite a while. But he says, I've never met such a smart group of people before. He couldn't believe it, because most of us don't only work, we have families, we have businesses that we run, and we have to figure things out. And that's exactly what happened on the street, is we figured stuff out. And I just read, I was trying to just remind myself of some stuff that happened, and I got a thank you, or a post that one of the businesses in Ottawa actually posted. He says, for 2 years, the government hasn't cared about our business and closed our business. And now all of a sudden that the truckers are here, all of a sudden they care about our businesses being closed. Well, they said for 2 years they haven't cared, but now all of a sudden they care.
Yeah, because they could make a point with it. Now, the point that you make, I want to drive that point home a little bit, that you're talking about. A lot of the folks there were people that lived on their feet. They've got to figure out solutions. We had experiences on that as well. As you know, I'm a professional engineer, and in the evening I would go to an event with lawyers and doctors and counselors and mayors and stuff, and they were all in for these mandates. And you guys are crazy. And the next morning, I would show up on a construction site, and the plumbers and the carpenters and everybody, they knew who I was, and they would stop. The site would stop, and they'd all come crowd around and tell me what was going on, and that they knew exactly what was going on. It was such a polarity in our society of these so-called elites and the folks like us who, you burn your fingers in the morning with a welding iron, and you drop a hammer on the floor and that kind of stuff. These people who you rightly put, I think you put it very well, who have to think on their feet and have to come up with creative solutions. That's very different than the people who pick up a regulation book and just follow it. Scott, what do you think about that?
I believe that the whole protest, the whole convoy was brought on by God. Like I know the first thing I put in my trailer was the Bible. When I got to Nicholas Street, we prayed that night. We sang "O Canada." The Bible was everywhere. It was everything about it was very godly. There was no doubt about it. God created what He did, and what He had us do. That was for sure. And everyone I spoke to, it just was the same thing. I seen scripture on trucks. I couldn't get over the scripture that was on the trucks all around Ottawa. Our own street was very biblical and believed in God. And then like Burn stated, when his truck ended up on Nicholas Street, and his truck had a 53-foot trailer that said "Mandate Freedom" on it, and he drove in circles around Ottawa, and then finally just parked on Nicholas Street. And it just so happened, without him knowing, he parked right dead center to the view of the Canadian National Defense building, which was a huge building, well defended, and they looked out their windows and seen Burns' truck and Sheldon's truck. Sheldon had True North Strong and Free truck, but they were billboards. And how they ended up on Nicholas Street it's not by fluke. It was not by fluke. And
I have a feeling I know why there was Bibles all over the place and whatnot, because our dear friends at the Bikers Church were there. And I don't think that there was a person in Ottawa in the, whatever you want to call it, the demonstration, the protest, who weren't touched by those folks.
I think they were the official chaplains of the convoy.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I'll just let me touch base on that I never went to the Bikers Church at all during those 3 weeks until the day we were arrested, and the Biker Church there was people looking for us, and they found us, and I'll thank God they found us, because we were kicked out of an old township building that they converted into an arrest us place. And then when we refused to sign, they just kicked us out the gate, and the closest gas station was a 45-minute walk from that place. And there were some of us were out there with no coats, and it was freezing cold, and we didn't know where to go, which direction. There was no help. And then a van pulled up and asked if we were with the convoy, and as soon as we said yes, I'll never forget, she got on the phone and she was so excited, and all of a sudden we were just swarmed by minivans, and there was minivans waiting there, and when they picked us up, they took us back to the church, where there was hundreds of people, and coffee and breakfast and food and clothes, whatever you needed, that church provided. It brought tears to my eyes. And then the hotels, they put people up, they found billets. Melissa and Rob and the whole gang at that church are just a godsend to the convoy. And I still love that church. I very much try to get to that church as much as I can.
It's certainly a unique place. Bern, you traveled the furthest. What was it like traveling? Did you go through, like, I know when the truckers came through Winnipeg, there were probably thousands of people lining the highway, and they were cheering, and there was hot dog stands set up. And what was that like? Did you experience that first? And what was that like coming through there? Was it building as you came east?
100%. But can I just go back a little bit to what you were talking to Elmer about before Scott went on his rabbit trail? No, sorry, Scott. I had it explained to me because I've spent a lot of time wondering, what is the difference? Like, why did some of us see this and some of us didn't? Very, very often, much more intelligent people than myself just bought it hook, line, and sinker. We're all about mandates. We're all about, it's for the greater good. We got to do this, blah, blah, blah. It was so often blue collar, regular Joe that saw it. What was the difference? Like, what, and in families, like we all, I dare say there's nobody here who didn't have a family that was kind of splintered by this. What was the difference? And I've had it explained. Somebody did a podcast, and he says, because you think about it, and you think, well, healthcare should have stopped it. Our nurses and doctors should have stopped this. The authorities should have stopped it. Like RCMP, whoever. But he explained it as they're all people that are used to following a system, something top down. They're used to there being stuff in place, and you just do like you're told. And Elmer put it so well. We're used to thinking on our feet. Whether you're a farmer, a small business owner, a truck driver, you're just used to making your own decisions, and you're used to thinking on your own, which to this day, like if you think about that, it makes it all the more incredible that stayed as peaceful as it did, because those were a bunch of stubborn, hard-headed, blue-collar workers that are used to taking things into their own hands and are not so good with just sitting there and letting things happen to them.
Yeah, there isn't a rule book. I mean, I think I had an interesting answer from the NCI when they were in Winnipeg. And Elmer, I don't know if you know who I'm talking about, but there was a small trucker down in somewhere on the Steinbach area, last name of Wall. And he testified at the
Rick Wall, yes.
Rick Wall, right. He testified at the NCI. And what Rick said was, they knew everything that was going to hell, that things were wrong, that the mandates were wrong. And he described how he and his wife sat down with his employees, and he explained to them that he was going to go to Ottawa and there may be consequences. And they all said, you got to go. And he did. And what happened after that, we had a retired provincial court judge come on, like maybe the next day, Judge Giesbrecht. And I asked him about that. I said to him, why is it that I said to him, when society gives you much, society should expect much. So when we have these doctors and we have these lawyers and we have these judges and we call them Your Honor and we give them money and we let them park closest to the restaurant and all those kinds of things, we give them a lot. How much does the trucker get? How much does Rick Wall get out of that? And so I said to Judge Giesbrecht, why is it that it's guys like Rick Wall who sit down with his wife and his employees and their kids, and they decide they have to do this, and our doctors and our lawyers and our politicians and all of these privileged group, they weren't there. And I can't remember what his response was, but it had something to do with they were afraid to lose things. If you've never been without, you can't imagine going without. And Elmer, I suggest that in the course of your lifetime, you've had to go without, and it's been up to you to get out of that hole.
Yeah. So adding to that, what you said there, Ken, though, is there was some doctors and people but they had no place to voice, right? Because any place they tried, it was always shut down. They couldn't get their voice to be heard. As much as they tried, the government would shut them down. They'd lose their license. It went on and on. And I think some of them, they finally, there was doctors that showed up in Ottawa.
Yeah. I think
and so much respect to these guys, right? Like so much respect to these doctors.
They finally had a place where they could voice what they knew. So I really respected the ones that spoke there, because it was so refreshing to have that. I think actually Derek Sloan had a doctor on kind of during the pandemic. I can't forget the guy's name. Was it Ted? Anyways, he did have somebody on. So it's not like none of them did, but most of them didn't.
Yeah, you're right. And the things that we had at the NCI, I can't remember how many doctors came out and testified about what was going on, losing their jobs, losing their licenses, being fined, all kinds of stuff. And that was happening in a lot of different areas. I got attacked by my professional association. They brought me up on charges because I had written a report. And so I know that feeling, I had been in that myself. But what happened? You got there, guys, and you found a place, and you got into the rhythm of what was going on. How did the government's response start to change over time? And what did you see happening when the police presence started to get bigger and bigger? Elmer, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, honestly, I personally didn't notice much other than we started getting calls to get out from our friends because they seen it from outside more so than what we did. Um, the immediate presence around us, I don't really think changed much other than overnight. I actually took off. I went just outside of Ottawa every night for a hotel because we didn't have enough sleeping facilities on the street there. Um, Although Scott would argue that because he slept in a cargo trailer the whole time. Scott was actually the very first person that got arrested in Ottawa, so he's seen firsthand what happened. Whereas I came in after that whole group was already arrested. That's when I tried coming into the city.
Well, Scott, what precipitated that? What happened? Like you were sleeping and they came in and roasted you out of bed? What happened?
I was up. I get up early, so I was up and I always put coffee on for everybody. And then I was just shoveling pathways to the trucks, and I heard a noise, and I looked up, and it was the drone was above me. And then I just looked up the street, and towards the top end of the street there was 35 cop cars coming across the bridge pretty fast. And then I didn't really know what to think of that until I turned around, and at the other end of the street there was like 500 armed soldiers, a sound cannon, cops everywhere. And I knew at that point they were coming to get us. So I just went to as many trucks and trailers as I could and woke people up and got them ready. And then I went down, and the police told me to either leave or be arrested. And I tried to explain to them that we were pretty peaceful, and I was in the middle of a protest, and I just couldn't leave today. And they yelled, "Arrest him." I was the first one. I was probably about 35 minutes before the next person was arrested. They weren't quite ready. CTV News, they weren't there. They didn't have their cameras set up, and it just I jumped the gun a little bit for them. And I did hear the police at the command center. I heard them say that Biden wants this cleaned up by the end of the weekend. I know what I heard. I called them out on it, and they raced me down the street. And the three officers went around the command center building and continued their conversation. So I don't know. I spent a lot of time watching American politics, and I do believe that Biden wanted it cleaned up. I do believe that our liberals are no different than the Democrats.
And you asked a question a while ago, just to get back to it, not to change the topic really, but I think it's good for, I don't know if most of your guests are from central Canada or where you're all located, but it was really interesting driving across because we had a little local convoy on a Sunday afternoon that I wanted to be a part of. There have been local people that helped me build that sign and put it together. And then we had a local rally, right? And it was well attended. It was well received. It was fun. So it was 5:00 at night before my buddy and I set out from Fort St. John. So it was basically dark by the time we left town. We went through Dawson Creek is an hour away. There's 2 vehicles honking their horns. And then the rest of the night going through Edmonton was in the dark. And we had no idea what that was going to be. So we got to the far side of Edmonton, had a little nap, and then my coffee maker was frozen. And we need coffee to drive. So we're like, well, we're going to have to stop for coffee in Lloydminster. And that's where it all started. Like, that's where it all became real. We pulled into a McDonald's, grabbed a coffee, and as we're getting back in the truck, somebody's on the two-way, on the radio channel, and he's like, "Is there anybody on here going to Convoy?" And before I even got to answer, somebody else is like, we're on Lad 2 on a different channel. I switch over and they were literally like they were gathering 2 blocks away at a different gas station. We had been planning to make it to North Battleford, where we thought we would catch up to the convoy. So I rolled in there and just traffic control rolled. They're like, oh, look at this truck coming. So they guide me to the head of this little, and at that point it was probably 5 semis and 10 vehicles, right? And so we drove that way with us BC boys at the head of this little convoy to the North Battleford. And then North Battleford, probably 20 trucks joined us. And there was just a gas station parking lot just crowded with people. And already just people thanking us for going. You know, people telling you their hard luck stories. And there were so many hard luck stories, you know, so many stories of people with, like, it break your heart. And every stop since then, you know, now we're in Saskatchewan, we're on the big highways, and it just kept building and building. Then we stopped for the first night out by Regina, where we joined up with the Western convoy. And yeah, like the amount of times that my buddy Andy and I said to each other, can you believe this? Like, it blew your mind. And you mentioned Winnipeg, and Winnipeg was eye-opening. Like, if there's a trucker anywhere that tells you he went through there dry-eyed, I beg to differ. You know, because how long does that trucker route around Edmonton or Winnipeg take, Elmer? 40 minutes, 45 minutes?
Well, on a normal good day, it would be 40 minutes, but with the convoy, it was a lot. It was slow.
It was 4 hours. Like, we were in our low gears. People were
Yeah.
literally running up and down between lines of trucks, tossing food in our windows, you know, like with trays of Tim's, and like, just like, that's when you realize this is real. You know, people need this. And our wives had packed big old coolers full of food. When I went home a month later, by the Alberta border, I stopped and I threw out that whole cooler of food because it had all gone bad. We had never had to depend on our own food. We got fed every step of the way, and we never touched our own food. But it was, as we got into Ontario, my wife, who's very, very perceptive, has the godly gift of discernment. She said, this is going to be a propaganda war. She was starting to see some of the things that was coming from the higher ups, the things that Trudeau was saying about us, how we're racist. So many of us are racist and misogynist, and these other things that he was trying to paint us as. She's like, this is going to be a propaganda war. And much as I'm not a huge fan of social media won the day for us, because that allowed real accounts to get out there. That's the only way we could fight back against the mainstream media, was by the lives and by people sending stuff back home and countering that narrative. And, you know, like, there was real news in real time getting out all over the place.
Yeah. I mean, were you guys aware, or when did you become aware of the CBC's little thing there where they had somebody come out and pose with a flag and a Nazi flag and all this, and then that was all over the news? Were you aware of that at the time that they had done that, or was that it was such a staged and small event that nobody knew anything about it? It was just a setup.
It was
kind of like Elmer said, like, we'd hear news sometimes from our significant others or our families, or people back home would see more stuff than we did. We were too busy having a good time, honestly, mixing with so many patriotic, friendly, loving Canadians. Like, the feeling on the streets, I honestly wish every Canadian could have experienced. Because it was the best of Canada. It didn't matter what skin color you had. It didn't matter where you were from. Like, people were just, and I made a point of asking, like, especially when you'd see, like, let's say a younger mom, and you'd see them out with her kids late at night. And I'd make a point of asking, don't you feel unsafe out there? None of them did. Like, you're in a big city, you're wandering around, and there's just, you can't explain it. There was a brotherly feeling out there, or that's not even the right word, like, just people looking out for each other, you know, and you could tell.
So, Ken, answering the question about the flag, I met a guy. He's like Scott. He says, I saw what I saw. He saw the gentleman coming out of Freeland's office with that flag. and CBC obviously was ready.
Well, I don't know if you saw Rebel News's expose on that, where they actually afterwards they figured out where CBC had to be and where these person with the flag had to be. It were impossible angles. They were from secure areas where a protester couldn't have got in there. So it was from what I could tell, it was a scam. Rosalie, you've had your hand up for a while. You want to go ahead?
Yeah, first of all, I've got a couple questions, but I just want to say that I'm so glad you guys are on, and what tonight is doing is just bringing back the memories of that experience. I mean, not that we all were there and experienced, but the experience even of watching it and watching how dramatic it even was on the world stage and what you guys did, the attention that you brought to the whole situation and even to Canada. I mean, not enough words to express appreciation and gratitude. But I just wanted to ask you a couple questions, and I'd love to hear your answers. Just quick, I mean, as short, I guess, as you can do it. What would you like to see your legacy to be, having attended and done this? I mean, this was huge. So, what would you like to see your legacy to come from this? And how valuable do you think it would be to have some kind of compilation in some way, shape, or form of the experiences? And I forget, I think maybe it was you, Elmer, who just said, I think it was you that just said, I honestly wish that every Canadian could have experienced what we had there. And even just hearing the three of you talk about it, I mean, you can just even feel the vibrations and the reverberations or the energy or whatever you want to call it of that powerful experience. Anyway, so I hope you remember the questions I had.
There is a lady that wrote a book. What is her name?
I have her book here.
I should know. I'm in chapter 1. I should know what this book is. But she put together a bunch of stories that I didn't even know. Like, having been there were stories about the people that ran some of the truck stops, and like bakers and mechanics and different people that got involved. And it was really well put together. She was a former journalist, I believe, right?
Donna Laframboise.
Donna, yes. Yeah. Did a really good job. My wife and my kids, like, when you're speaking about legacy, my wife and my kids are definitely tired of hearing me tell the same old stories. But Scott and Elmer will identify, like, we will never get tired of reminiscing about this. And I wish my wife could have joined me, and she almost did at one point. And then the people that were going to fly her out, the plane ended up not being airworthy. She did join us later on when we toured with a documentary that was made about the whole thing. So she got to meet Rob and Melissa from Bikers Church. Got to meet some of the players that we knew, but she never experienced the convoy at its best. And so she never quite caught that feeling. Do you know what I mean? Yep. And I wish she would have, because it would have expanded her patience for my stories, I think.
And what can we've run out of time. I hope you guys don't mind we go a little over, but what happened as a result of attending the convoy? What happened to each of you afterwards? What I mean, you came away with memories, but what also happened? Elmer, can you talk about that, or and perhaps...
So are you talking about the court cases we had to go to after?
Yeah.
So I think all of our vehicles here, and you got to all remember, we're only there's hundreds of us, right? There's hundreds of people. There's people with a lot worse stories than any of us. I think we would all feel we were very protected. We probably all had wives or somebody praying for us, because what essentially happened to whatever we landed up having our trucks all impounded. Some of them got wrecked. But again, somebody came up and paid for the tow trucks, and you got to remember, all the tow trucks, they covered their signs so they couldn't see who was towing it. The drivers would wear full masks, so not just the COVID mask. It was a full mask, so nobody would recognize who they were. Other than the RCMP tow trucks, I'm not sure whether they. I think even those drivers wore full masks. So then after that, sorry, go ahead.
I just said real heroes.
Yeah, yeah. And then after that, I've had to go back to Ottawa for court multiple times. Mine was fully covered by JCCF. I know Byrne, uh, he had to pay for his own court costs through, I know your community supported you. And Scott also had, did you have all of yours covered or did you end up having to pay some?
No, JCCF covered it.
So Elmer referred to my, yeah, again, like Scott talked about this, God being through all of this, and there were so many God moments and stories in the middle of it. I just really felt like we had been represented by a wonderful lawyer named Monique, and gone to church with her, amazing lady, and she was contracted to JCCF. Well, I looked at it as like an insurance thing. At some point, JCCF started realizing this is big. So they wanted to move us inboard to the in-house lawyers. I just didn't have a comfort level with that. Nothing on their lawyers. I just didn't know them. And I felt strongly that I needed to stick with Monique and Diane. And so made the decision to fund my own trial, which my charges were mischief and obstruct property. We didn't know what they were going to be asking for. Pretty new territory to most of us. But yeah, the same people that made that documentary called Unacceptable, Benjamin Hobb and his wife Johanna, amazing people that live about 2 miles from us here. He ended up putting together a fundraiser, and just like a month before I went, my trial ended up being right on my 50th birthday, December 7th of 2023. And a month before, he put together this fundraiser, and they raised, and again, to God be the glory, like they raised, I think, within $500 of what we needed, like over $40,000.
Oh,
Amazing. That's amazing.
And just talk about feeling the weight of a community behind you. You know, we had felt the weight of it. We'd felt the weight of people praying. We'd felt the weight of people, just the incredible messages of support and the things that they were doing. But when they raised the funds like that, I'm like, they haven't forgotten about us, you know?
Yeah.
And that let us just go to trial with just, you know, come what may, we're going to be okay. And so then our lawyers successfully argued a charter challenge in my case, where they said I was not legally arrested. There was a big gap when they arrested me, and Scott referred to it a little bit, but there's a group of 5 officers that pulled me out of my truck at 7:30 in the morning on a Friday morning on my son's 15th birthday. And with another guy with a machine gun on a trailer ahead of my truck with a machine gun pointed in my cab because I was such a dangerous offender, right? Anyway, when it comes around to trial, those officers walked me down the block, handed me off to 2 more officers, walked me down around another block where I was then booked and stuck in a car. Well, when it came to trial time, those first officers that actually pulled me from my truck weren't represented. There was nobody on the witness stand representing that group. And the judge, and rightfully so, and we had a good judge, I believe. She said, it's all hearsay. Like what he's arrested for is hearsay. How do you connect him to that truck? How do you say that he was parked there? He could have been walking to work. He could have been protesting from the sidewalk. Maybe he's going for a coffee, you know? And so they ended up essentially throwing out the case because they said there's no support for what he was arrested for.
Yeah. You know, it's really interesting to me. I would bet you that the vast majority of Canadians prior to the truckers had never heard of the charge of mischief before. And so you've got people whose lives were they tried to ruin their lives, and they on these mischief charges. And then you have the federal government convicted both in federal court and in federal appeal court for illegally enacting the Emergencies Act, or the War Measures Act, if you're old enough to remember, before they changed the name. And who got pulled off to jail on that? So your mischief charge, which is sitting in a truck or honking a horn or doing something like that, compared to taking away Canadians' rights under the War Measures Act, and no one goes to jail.
I will always be proud of what we did. It's like seeing the ripple effects of what happened, being involved. But I would love to see some accountability, and I've lost faith in there being any accountability.
Yeah.
Like there were so many wrongs done to Canadian citizens. Like Jab Avizi, you know that name probably. I've gotten to know him fairly well. He was beaten. Like he was beaten. He did not resist arrest. He was on his hands, like on his knees, and he was beaten. Where's the accountability for that?
Yeah.
Especially in the wake of saying this whole thing was unjustified. Now where's the accountability?
Yeah.
I've lost faith in the system to ever bring that.
It's like a mulligan. They've taken a mulligan. They've been convicted in their own damn kangaroo court, but they've taken a mulligan. Deb, you've had your hand up very patiently for quite some time.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you guys very, very much for doing what you have done. I know it's come at a considerable cost to you, but you did wake up Canada and you did wake up the world. And I think that is something you can be very proud of, despite everything. I guess my little bit of a question is, were you surprised at all that the government did not want to meet nor talk to anybody from the convoy or the representatives?
I think we were, like I said earlier, we were very naive. A lot of us probably haven't been that involved politically. We thought, we could just go and have a civil conversation, just make our case. Very naive. When we were sitting, we ended up, somebody paid for a hotel for us to sit while our trucks were impounded. We had to wait a week for our trucks to be released to us. And that's when it really hit me how corrupt our media is, like mainstream media, and how complicit in this whole thing, in brainwashing the masses and in peddling the federal government's viewpoints. And so, now I'm not surprised, but going in, yes, surprised. I thought it would I thought it would go better than that.
So there we're very different with that, Vern, because from what I had seen, I did not expect, like what I saw was basically exactly what I expected. I did not expect it because they were lying through their teeth and we saw it so clearly.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're a liar, you don't want to face truth. And I don't know if most of you know that. I think most of you know they literally we had tables set up in a hotel with doctors and lawyers set up and waiting for the government on the other side. Did they show up? No.
I should have maybe done a little bit more.
Lose.
I should have checked into history a little more because there's a family history from Pierre. There's a spot you can visit I think it's around Salmon Arm, BC, where he on a train flipped off protesters. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. I see what he passed down.
Well, Scott, maybe this is for you because, I interviewed Pastor Coates from Alberta, and he, during this stuff, refused to close down his church, and they did a whole bunch of things to them. But, when he was testifying at the NCI, he said, well, I was arrested. Well, you know what? I've designed, I haven't been to jail, but I've designed prisons and I've talked to folks in prisons and I've designed the facilities and what happens to you. So I thought it was interesting for Pastor Coates, and I asked him, exactly what did they do to you when you were arrested, Pastor Coates? You were arrested because you were keeping your church open and having religious services, which are protected, by the way, under the Constitution. What did they do to you? Because most Canadians don't know what happens when you get arrested. Now, I don't know if they did this to you, Scott, but they stripped him down naked, Pastor Coates. They put him in a cell, a concrete cell with no blanket, no pillow or anything else. And of course, they sprayed him down and did all this because he was a minister, a pastor, trying to preach to his church. Now, I don't know if they took the whole gamut with you, Scott, or not. And maybe you don't want to talk about it. If you don't, that's fine. But I think it's important that when we say such and such happened, understand that most Canadians don't know really what that means. And so if there are things like that where you were humiliated by these people, Canadians need to know that.
The police that were there, most of them were very respectful. They treated us just as fair as they could. Now, one of the police during my trial had to state that they were told to expect weapons and retaliation from us. So when they were at the end of our street, ready to come in. They were expecting us to come out with guns ablazing and be as aggressive as we possibly could be. The bunch of bad truckers we were. Really, they could have sent a female officer with a school bus, and she could have arrested every one of us. They didn't need 1,000 soldiers and a sound cannon and all the hype that they got. They didn't need any of that. We would have all gone peacefully.
Well,
But it's just the whole, like, being herded into a paddy wagon, having handcuffs on you, if that's a new experience for you.
Yeah.
It's very, very, Scott, that's very demoralizing. It's I don't know what the proper term is for it. It really struck me really hard. Because that paddy wagon, how many of us were in there, Scott? Like 10?
Yeah.
But all
8.
in individual steel little cubicles. Like, we couldn't see each other. We could hear each other a little bit. And we couldn't see outside. And we drove through the city. And what really struck me and kind of broke my heart is that there were people outside on the sidewalks that were cheering this. Like, they were cheering the fact that we were being arrested and driven to jail. And I'm like, this country is so divided on something we should be so united on. It really hit me hard.
I just looked up in the corner of my screen, and somebody's ears must have been burning in Ottawa, because I look up, I see honeybee on the screen at the top. I don't know if you guys can see it or not, but I'm just gonna. You mind if I spotlight you? Okay.
Do it.
I'm
Hi, boys.
Hey, Melissa.
Hi.
Oh my goodness.
Well, you guys, Melissa, they were talking about what an integral part you and your husband and your whole congregation played during the Ottawa event. And I didn't tell them, I didn't share with them that I didn't get quite as hospitable a greeting at your church about a month or two ago. I had spoken there on a Saturday at the NHPPA, and the next Sunday morning I showed up for the service. Now I my plane was leaving later that afternoon, so I had a suitcase with me. I had a leather suitcase and I had a suit jacket on, and all this. And I went right up to the front of the church and I sat down. And it hadn't started yet. And finally somebody with an Elmer beard about this long come up to me, and he sits down beside me. He said, "We'd just like to know who you are."
I guess you were too official in a suit jacket for Bikers Church. We're very suspicious of people in suit jackets.
That's not normal attire at that church.
I was catching a plane. Hey guys, we've got a little bit over, but for each of you, if you want to, you've got an opportunity here to send a message or give us a message or say something about your experience. Do you want to start, Scott? And
believe in God, believe in Melissa. She's wonderful.
Elmer?
I would say the big thing is we need to have close friends. We need to protect each other, and we need to trust in God. God is ultimately the one that's going to bring us out of this whole mess, because we all know we're not out of it yet. We still don't have a godly government. We still don't have justice. And that's like Bern was saying, when's justice going to come? And my son-in-law just read Psalms here. We're out in Puerto Vallarta right now as a family. And he read the Psalms and he says, there's no way that unjust people will get away with it. The payday comes. And I think for some of us, not only do we need to comfort us with payday is coming, but also if you are not on the right side, you might want to consider that payday comes. And that's one thing that was very important to me throughout the whole time is I wanted to make sure I stood on truth. Truth and love, accepting people that think differently than I do, but at the same time, I can't live a lie. Living a lie, wearing a freaking face diaper over my face, thinking that that's going to do something to protect us from a virus is so bizarre in my head that I do not want to live a lie, and I want to try and do that in every part of my life, never living a lie. I want to live truth, and if there's something that I perceive as wrong and where I treated somebody wrong, I want to make that right.
Vern, the tough.
There's so many things to say, so little time. You know what, like that whole Charlie Kirk thing kind of woke me up too. And this time, the need for dialogue, the need for us to have enough relationship with the people around us to where you can have a conversation. And we have lost the luxury of just being able to sit on our butts and let our good lives show how good things are. You know, we actually have to verbalize our faith. We have to verbalize who we are. We have to verbalize what's important to us, because of the silence of the masses, special interest groups run our country. And so now how do we fight back against that? How do we fight back against that in an upright and a moral way? You know, and both Scott and Elmer spoke about God being at the center of that. This country has a spiritual problem. It's way more than just a political problem. Mm-hmm. It's a spiritual issue. And I don't know, in God's hands, there's hope for the future. You know, when we look at our politicians, it can get pretty demoralizing, but I believe that there's still someone on the throne who has it all in his hands.
Well, I appreciate that. Melissa, I know we dragged you in late, but do you want to say something to our members and to our friends here?
Yeah, I'm really late to the party, but I've always got something to say. Well, I do have Elmer's truck tattooed on my arm. One thing. So if you're wondering how committed to the cause I am, that's how committed I am. I can barely look at these three guys without bawling my eyes out because I love them so much. And I'm so thankful for what they did for our country.
I just love you.
I'm so thankful for what they've done. And we do have a spiritual problem. It's not a political one. And we keep trying to put different people in the same corrupt system. It's not going to fix it. Our problem is godlessness. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, I represent Bikers Church, and I take that very, very seriously. And I want to be a witness for Christ. I always want to be sowing seed with the hardest of the hard. And, you know, I literally just got a text from Chris Carbert. Somebody from the West, you know, from Alberta told him he needed to talk to me. Like, I don't have magic words. I have Jesus, though. I have Jesus. I have a lot of Jesus. I deal him and I use him. And so everywhere I go, I'm dealing and I'm using Jesus because he is literally our only hope.
Well, you know, Melissa, I'm not going to preach to you, but when I look into the eyes of my friends here, and I listen to their stories, there are so many stories in the Bible that are so reflective of that. Who did they use to bring people out of slavery? It wasn't the kings and it wasn't the princes. It was the Gideons of this world.
The least of these.
And I think we see that again. And part of the message I wanted to get out and remind our membership about is these are everyday folks who did extraordinary things. And so if you only take one thing away from tonight, I want you to be encouraged. I want you to be inspired that we all have something to give and we can all do extraordinary things. It's not the white knight coming in on a horse that's going to save us. It's not voting for the same people again and again. It's us taking command and us governing. And that's where we're headed with Manitoba Stronger. So with that, everybody, I really appreciate you guys coming on tonight. It was, at least for me, inspiring. And I know the messaging has gone through the roof on this. And I really appreciate you coming tonight. And I appreciate you all for what you did for Canada.
Thanks for the
And
opportunity.
I'd like
Ken. It was
to,
fun.
yeah, I'd like to give a big thank you to Ken as well. Ken, what you're doing, you and Rosalie. I don't think there's any of us that have spent so much time and energy into this as you guys have, other than Melissa. She's done.
Well, we don't have a
I feel-
tattoo. We don't have a tattoo of your truck on our arm yet. So we'll have to get
Yeah.
But I've got a great picture of Rosalie in that truck.
Oh yeah! Oh yeah! Elmer let me drive his truck. Woohoo! That was awesome.
All right, you guys, good night. I'm just going to wrap it up with the membership in a minute. And again, thank you so much for coming out tonight.
Thank you guys. Thank you.
Thank
so
you,
much.
guys.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
Thank
Love
God bless
you.
you.
really.
Really appreciate
God
you.
bless you all.
Yeah,
God bless you all.
Now,
Thank you.
for the rest of you, I'd like to take a 10-minute break and see if anybody sticks around at 8 o'clock. I want to come back on and I want to start showing you guys what we have to do to start getting involved in the election. Even if it's not in your mind right now, I think this is an opportunity for you to see how some things work. And tonight I wanted to take about 15 minutes and I wanted to take you guys through the bylaws that you need to be aware of. I want to show you where to find them because every municipality has a different election bylaw coming into our municipal election. I know that's nuts, but everyone does. So I'm going to take you through the one in St. Clements, and then it'll give you give you some example as to how you can find that information. So if we can take about a little break till 8 o'clock, I'll just leave this thing on. I'm going to get some water. We'll come back. We'll do that quick, and then we'll continue with the lessons next week. All right?
Yeah.